Sure, some of my favorite roller coasters have been built on a boring, flat piece of land. Just take a look at some of the best like Velocicoaster, Iron Gwazi, and Maverick. However, when a coaster takes advantage of its surroundings, this is the recipe to create some of the most unique roller coasters I've been on. There's just something so intriguing how a ride contours to the land it is built on. In this video, I'm going to tell you some of my favorite terrain roller coasters. But before we get to this amazing list, you might be asking yourself, what exactly is a terrain roller coaster? Well, just like the name implies, it's a roller coaster that uses the terrain to shape the layout of the ride. Technically, every roller coaster uses the terrain for its layout, but instead of bulldozing the hillside to make a flat piece of land, these roller coasters use the uneven terrain to form the ride. There are some coasters that may seem like a terrain coaster, like the ones at Disney, but I would not call them a terrain coaster. Those attractions started with a flat piece of land and built the structure and landscape around the ride. So, kind of like the opposite of what I'm going for here. Oh, and please do me a favor by clicking on that like button, and if you love roller coasters, you better subscribe. Let's start right off at my home park of Kennywood. This place has 3 roller coasters that use the terrain to its full ability. First two would be Jackrabbit and Thunderbolt. They are classic wooden roller coasters that share some similarities with each other. Both roller coasters sit at the top of a valley, and the coaster will dive down into the valley prior to reaching the lift hill. Jackrabbit features the legendary Double Down. This airtime hill will send you flying out of your seat. Thunderbolt dives down into the valley multiple times, saving its largest drop for last. Now, the true star of Kennywood, Phantom's Revenge, also uses the terrain. This coaster dives off the side of the valley, piercing through Thunderbolt while reaching its max speed of 85 miles per hour. Phantom's Revenge winds up and down the valley, traveling through and under Thunderbolt, all while performing some of the best pops of airtime you can get. The ride may be on the shorter side, it only has 3,200 feet of track, but the way it uses the land makes this coaster legendary. There's a reason why many coaster enthusiasts will take the pilgrimage to Kennywood solely to check out Phantom's Revenge. Traveling only a couple hours away, we come to Waldameer, the home of Ravine Flyer II. This roller coaster has to be the definition of what a terrain roller coaster is, because it's truly spectacular how the engineers were able to cram this coaster onto this plot of land. Ravine Flyer II will dive off the valley multiple times, traveling over a highway and wrap around the base of the hill while performing airtime hills, overbank turns, and laterals. It's been a few years since I've been on Ravine Flyer II, so I better plan a visit here in the near future. Since we're still talking about roller coasters in Pennsylvania, I better bring up the sweetest place on earth, Hershey Park. This amusement park has a few roller coasters that are technically terrain coasters, but there is one that stands out amongst the best, Great Bear. This is an inverted roller coaster that sits on the top of the hill. The coaster flies over many attractions, all while weaving alongside the valley. Because the park was never given permission to build a support structure inside the water at the bottom of the hill, the ride features a few unique support beams that really make this coaster stand out as a terrain coaster. The elements on Great Bear are exactly what you want from an inverted roller coaster, intense and whippy. The final inversions really flip you through the elements, making this not only a great terrain coaster, but one of my favorite inverted roller coasters overall. Up in the New England states is home to another great terrain roller coaster, Boulder Dash. Located at Lake Compounds, this wooden roller coaster has been built on the side of a mountain. The ride hugs the terrain for almost the entire layout. Majority of the roller coaster isn't even visible, as being hidden behind a forest of trees. The only parts of this ride that are visible would be that final stretch of airtime hills and the first drop before disappearing into the hillside. On my last ride back in 2019, I thought Boulder Dash was a little bit more on the rough side than I would prefer, but the park has been putting a lot of work into this attraction, including a portion of Titan Track, which is made of steel rails. If you ever find yourself up in this part of the country, make sure to put Boulder Dash high on your to-do list. The two major theme parks in Ohio are basically built over flat pieces of land, but Kings Island, there's a couple roller coasters that are able to use the surrounding valley to its advantage. The best of the bunch has to be the Beast. This is a massive wooden roller coaster. In fact, the longest roller coaster in the United States and the longest wooden coaster worldwide. Even though the Beast is a terrain coaster, I feel it's more like an adventure coaster. Once you take that first drop, the coaster disappears into the forest until you are briefly visible at the top of the second lift. For a good chunk of the ride, I wouldn't call the layout breathtaking, but it's more about the experience than anything else. The ride follows the natural contours of the land, creating a sort of run through the woods. The best time to ride the Beast is near park closing. When it gets dark outside, this roller coaster turns into a completely different animal. Building a roller coaster in the Smoky Mountains is the perfect recipe to create a terrain roller coaster. Well, that's exactly what they did at Dollywood. A few of the roller coasters I would classify as terrain coasters, but only 2 of them stand out as the best. First up is Tennessee Tornado. This is a short but sweet looping roller coaster that dives in, around, and alongside the mountain. At the top of the first drop, you don't even feel too high off the ground, but then you find yourself diving through the mountain and right into a massive vertical loop. A couple years ago, the park cut down a few of the trees surrounding the roller coaster, so it's a little bit more visible, but it still doesn't change how well this coaster has been adapted into the landscape. The other coaster is, of course, Lightning Rod. This year, the park removed the launch and replaced it with a more traditional chain lift. From what I hear, it doesn't affect the rest of the ride, which is good news. Lightning Rod is a through-and-through terrain coaster. This hybrid roller coaster continues to wind around the mountain, performing crazy airtime maneuvers that you would expect from Rocky Mountain construction. The finale is where this coaster goes off the chain. That quad down continues to build up speed, making the following airtime hill more intense than the last one. Lightning Rod is a crazy ride that, without the use of the hillside, this coaster layout could never exist. To wrap this list up, let's move over to the sister park of Dollywood and check out Silver Dollar City. Every roller coaster in the park minus the kiddie coaster and dark ride would be classified as a terrain coaster. I don't even know if it would be possible to build an off-the-shelf coaster here, and if you could, that would be a disservice to this park. Silver Dollar City is tucked away in the mountain and half of the park dips over the side. The 2 standout coasters are none other than Outlaw Run and Time Traveler. Outlaw Run, which is another hybrid wooden roller coaster by Rocky Mountain Construction. This ride uses the terrain to pull off its large 162-foot first drop. The rest of the coaster is traveling up and down through the mountain, finishing off with an incredible upward double barrel roll. Similar to what I said about the Beast, once the coaster leaves the lift hill, it's barely visible until the train climbs up onto the brake run. I could only imagine that Outlaw Run would make a fantastic night ride. Unfortunately, when I was at the park, it was only open until 7 p.m. Time Traveler, which is located on the opposite end of the park, is a very unusual terrain coaster. The station is located at the top of the hill, while most of the ride sits down in the valley below. The coaster starts off with one of the best airtime moments on any roller coaster, a vertical drop right out of the station. After flipping and spinning through its twisted layout, Time Traveler has a couple LSM launches to keep the fun moving. The second launch is basically there to propel the train back up into the top of the hillside and onto the brake run. Not only does Time Traveler have an incredible layout that uses the full ability of the terrain, but the trains spin. So every time you ride this coaster, it feels like a brand new experience. I highly recommend you get at least one ride in the back of the car so you can feel that whip being pulled over that vertical drop. Well, that's going to wrap up my list of favorite terrain coasters. Honestly, I could keep going on as there are still plenty of other great terrain coasters to talk about. But maybe if you enjoyed this content, I can bring them up in another video. As always, thanks for watching. This is Extreme Thrills.